Most people think the worst thing an HOA can do is send a nasty letter about your grass being 2 inches too tall. But for me, the nightmare started with flashing lights, loud music, and the unmistakable smell of cheap barbecue smoke drifting through the night air. At first, I thought it was just another one of those neighborhood gatherings that never seemed to end. But when I stepped onto my porch and looked down the sloping field below my house, my heart sank. They weren't just throwing a party. They were throwing it on my land. The music thumped like a heartbeat through the night. A local band, uninvited, unlicensed, was set up on a makeshift stage. Food trucks lined the dirt edge of my property, spilling greasy fumes into the crisp evening air. Dozens of cars jammed up my driveway and along the private access road. I'd paid to maintain myself. And in the middle of it all stood the HOA president, Linda Markham, arms folded, sunglasses perched on her head even at night, sipping from a red plastic cup like she owned the place. She spotted me instantly. The little smirk that spread across her face was more infuriating than the blaring music. She knew exactly what she was doing. I marched down the hill, my boots crunching over dry leaves, the noise of the party swelling louder with every step. My fists were clenched, my pulse hammering in my ears. This wasn't just disrespect. This was trespassing. Linda. I shouted over the music. She turned lazily, pretending not to hear me. A few partygoers turned their heads, curious. I stormed closer. This is my land. You can't just set up a carnival here. Her smirk widened. Oh, don't be dramatic. The community deserves a space to enjoy. You weren't using it anyway. The sheer arrogance left me speechless for a moment. My land, my taxes, my responsibility. And she waved it off like I was some cranky neighbor whining about fireworks. You can't just, I started, but she cut me off with a laugh that carried into the crowd. Relax, she said, clapping me on the shoulder as if I were a child. Nobody's hurting anything. Besides, you should be thanking us. This is the liveliest your boring land has ever been. The crowd laughed along, and I felt my cheeks burn hot. They thought this was a joke. They thought I was powerless. But what Linda didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that I wasn't just some grumpy landowner. I had something she couldn't bully, couldn't fine, couldn't shame me out of. Something far more powerful. And legal. I clenched my jaw, biting back the urge to spill the truth right there. Not yet. No, I wasn't going to reveal my trump card in the middle of this stolen party. Let them enjoy themselves. Let them laugh. Because soon they'd learn exactly what kind of land they were standing on. As the night stretched on, the party grew louder, sloppier, more reckless. Kids darted between parked cars. People stumbled into my garden beds. Drinks were spilled on the gravel path. But it was when I saw the first drunk man wander toward the back fence, the tall, reinforced steel barrier I'd built with my own hands, that my stomach flipped. He was inches away from something he couldn't possibly imagine. Something the HOA had never even considered. A low, rumbling sound carried on the breeze, so deep it vibrated in my chest. Most of the partygoers brushed it off as distant thunder, but I knew better. And if they kept trespassing deeper into my property, they'd know too. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just disrespect anymore. It was danger, because the one thing the HOA had forgotten, or maybe never bothered to ask, was why I kept that land fenced so heavily. Why I fought so hard to keep my property rights intact. They thought I was just stubborn. But in reality, I had every legal right to keep what most people would call unthinkable. And tonight, their arrogance was about to collide head-on with claws, teeth, and the full weight of the law. The next morning, I expected the party to be over, but when I stepped outside with my coffee, I froze. The smell of burnt charcoal still lingered in the cool dawn air, mixing with damp earth and crushed grass. Empty cups, paper plates, and food wrappers littered the field like confetti after a parade. My gravel driveway was scarred with tire ruts. And the stage? Still standing. The HOA hadn't just partied on my land. They had moved in. By mid-morning, trucks rolled in again. This time, they weren't food vendors. They were contractors. Lumber, tables, tents hauled right past the old private property signs that apparently meant nothing to these people. I stormed down the hill, boots crunching over broken glass and soggy napkins. "Linda!" I barked, spotting her directing a crew like some queen bee. She turned, all fake sweetness. "Oh, good. You're here. We were hoping you'd see what we're building. What you're building." My voice cracked like a whip. She spread her hands as if unveiling a masterpiece. The community's recreation area. A little park, some tables, maybe even a stage for future events. We've been talking about this for months. And really, this empty land is perfect for it. Empty land? My jaw tightened. This is my land. Paid for with my money. Maintained by me. You have no right. Her smile didn't even falter. If anything, it grew wider, like she was savoring the fight. "Oh, please," she said. "You've let this place sit untouched for years. It's practically wasted space. Think of the children, the families, the sense of community. Why should one stubborn person get in the way of everyone else's happiness?" Her words carried. A small crowd of homeowners, sipping coffee and munching on donuts, nodded along. A few even clapped, and there I was, one person against an entire crowd, painted as selfish just because I dared to protect what was mine. I took a slow breath, my fists clenched at my sides. "You're trespassing," I said coldly. "Every single one of you. And if you don't clear out, I'll call the sheriff." That got some murmurs. A few people shifted uncomfortably. "But Linda?" She laughed. "Oh, go ahead. Call them. You think the county's going to side with you? Everyone knows HOAs keep order. You're outnumbered, and frankly, you look ridiculous trying to stop something this positive." She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Besides," she whispered, "what are you going to do? Scare us with your spooky fences?" I didn't answer, because she had no idea. The reinforced steel fencing, the warning signs carefully worded in legal jargon, the permits filed with the state. All of it wasn't just for SHODOT, it was for the residents, and for them. The ones sleeping in their secure enclosures just beyond the tree line, hidden from the nosy neighbors who never once cared enough to ask what I really did with my land. Linda smirked at my silence, mistaking it for defeat. She patted my arm as if to dismiss me, then turned back to her workers. "All right, everyone, let's get those posts set by noon. This park is happening." The crowd cheered. I turned on my heel and walked back toward the house, coffee still in hand. Let them think they'd won, because the deeper they pushed, the closer they came to discovering the truth. That evening, the noise grew again. Hammering, drilling, laughing, echoes of entitlement drifting across land that wasn't theirs. I sat in my kitchen, lights off, watching the tree line through the window. The bears were restless. I could feel it in the way the ground seemed to vibrate when one shifted its massive weight. The air carried the musky, wild scent I'd grown used to, but that no partygoer would ever mistake for anything ordinary. I tightened my grip on the mug. Soon, the HOA would push too far, and when that happened, the last laugh wouldn't be theirs. The following afternoon, the confrontation came to a head. I was hauling trash bags full of their litter, beer cans, greasy paper, broken folding chairs, when a black SUV pulled up, tires crunching on the gravel. Out stepped Linda, flanked by two HOA board members in matching polo shirts. It looked like some twisted corporate takeover. "Look," she began, with that infuriatingly calm tone, "we want to settle this peacefully. The HOA voted unanimously this morning to designate this land as community use. That's a fair decision. I dropped the trash bags at my feet with a thud. You don't get to vote on my land. The man to her left, a tall, balding type with too much cologne, stepped forward. Technically, the bylaws allow the HOA to repurpose unused lots for the good of the neighborhood. Unused lots? My voice rose. This is not a vacant lot. It's a working property with state-licensed facilities. Do you have any idea what you're walking into? Linda snorted. Oh, please. Don't try to intimidate us with legal mumbo-jumbo. If you had anything serious here, we'd already know. We keep tabs on everything in this community. Her arrogance was staggering. You keep tabs? I said quietly. Then how come you missed the permits filed with the Department of Wildlife? How come you didn't notice the reinforced containment fences? Or the delivery trucks that come twice a month with fresh livestock feed? That wiped the smugness off a few faces, but Linda? She just folded her arms. Empty threats. You can't scare us. I stepped closer, my voice low, steady, and sharp as broken glass. I'm not trying to scare you, Linda. I'm trying to warn you. You've walked onto land that holds something bigger than you, bigger than your little board, bigger than this whole neighborhood. And if you keep pushing, you won't just face me. You'll face the law itself. Her eyes narrowed. Is that supposed to mean something? She asked. I smiled faintly. Oh, it will. The silence that followed was heavy. Even the hammering from the workers seemed to pause. For the first time, doubt flickered in Linda's eyes. She didn't understand, not yet. But the seed of fear was there, planted deep. And soon, very soon, the whole neighborhood would understand why this land had never been theirs to take. Because while they saw empty fields, I saw something else entirely. I saw the glint of amber eyes in the shadows, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the HOA discovered the truth the hard way. The HOA thought their shiny new community park was a triumph. For a week, they strutted across my land like conquerors. Lawn chairs dotted the field, kids played tag where my warning signs once stood, and families barbecued as though the smoke and grease somehow erased the fact they were trespassing. But something else lingered. In the air now, something they couldn't quite explain. It began with a sound. Late one night, a deep, rumbling growl rolled across the field like distant thunder. The partygoers paused. Some glanced up from their card games and coolers of cheap beer. A few mothers clutched their children closer. What was that? Someone muttered, double quotes, "Oh, just coyotes," another answered quickly, eager to brush it off. But coyotes don't shake the ground when they move. Coyotes don't rattle steel fences with a single swipe of a paw. I knew the truth, and by the looks of their pale faces, part of them did too. The whispers started the next morning. Did you hear it? Sounded big. Like really big. Maybe there's a bear around here. I overheard them as I worked on my porch, pretending not to notice. The gossip spread like wildfire. Neighbors murmuring about tracks in the dirt, about heavy breathing carried on the night wind. Linda dismissed it, of course. She stood in the middle of the crowd with her arms folded, sunglasses perched on her head, declaring, "There's nothing dangerous here. If there was, I'd know. The only predator around is him." She pointed up the hill toward me. The crowd laughed nervously, but their eyes told a different story. Fear. They didn't know it yet, but instinct was already warning them. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off, watching the shadows stretch long across the field. The HOA had set up floodlights around their makeshift park, the harsh glow cutting into the darkness. And in that glow, something moved. A hulking silhouette shifted behind the reinforced fence, pacing with slow, deliberate steps. The ground quivered with each movement. The air carried that musky, wild scent, pungent, earthy, and unmistakable to anyone who'd ever been near the wilderness. The bears knew. They could smell the intruders, and they didn't like it. The next morning, I heard pounding at my door. I opened it to find one of the HOA's younger members, a woman clutching a stroller with wide, frightened eyes. "Listen," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "I don't care about the party, okay? But last night I heard something. And it wasn't a coyote. It sounded," she swallowed hard. "It sounded like a bear." I studied her for a moment. Her fear wasn't fake. "You should keep your distance from the back fence," I said simply. Her eyes widened. "So there is something back there?" Before I could answer, Linda's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Emily, what do you think you're doing?" The young woman flinched, muttered a quick apology, and hurried back down the path. Linda stayed, glaring up at me with all the venom she could muster. "Enough of your games," she snapped. "You're spreading rumors, trying to scare people off. It won't work." "We're not going anywhere." I leaned against the doorframe, calm and steady. "Linda," I said softly, "you're poking at something you don't understand. Keep pressing, and those whispers you hear won't stay whispers for long." Her jaw tightened, but I could see it, the flicker of unease behind her eyes. For the first time, she didn't have a quick retort. That night, the rumors became impossible to ignore. A group of teenagers, trying to prove themselves brave, snuck toward the enclosure with flashlights. They didn't make it 10 steps before a roar split the air, primal, deafening, shaking the trees. The boys dropped their flashlights and bolted, screaming back into the crowd. "There's something out there," one shouted, his voice breaking. "It's huge. It's a bear." I saw its eyes. The party came to a screeching halt. Phones whipped out. Voices overlapped in panic. Some neighbors grabbed their kids and ran home. Others demanded answers from Linda, who stood frozen, her forced smile finally cracking. I watched from my porch, arms crossed, letting the chaos play out, because for once, the HOA was getting a taste of fear, and it wasn't coming from me. The next morning, the neighborhood Facebook page lit up. Strange sounds near the new park. Anyone else hear them? Saw paw prints by the fence. Definitely not a dog. Can someone confirm if there are bears back there? Linda tried to do damage control, posting long rants about community spirit and baseless rumors meant to divide us. But the more she denied it, the louder the whispers grew, and the louder the whispers grew, the bolder the bears became, because that night, one paw slammed against the steel fencing so hard the entire park shuddered. And suddenly, the HOA realized that what they'd been laughing off wasn't just gossip. It was real. And it was only getting closer. For a brief moment after the sheriff's visit, I thought it was over. Neighbors cleared out, muttering under their breath. Some avoided my eyes, some whispered apologies, and a few downright ran when another low growl echoed across the tree line. But arrogance doesn't vanish overnight, especially not with an HOA involved. 2 days later, the trucks came back. Not cautious this time. Not sneaky. Loud, brazen, rolling right over my gravel drive like they owned it. Flatbeds stacked with lumber. Portable toilets. Even a bounce house strapped down with bungee cords. And at the front of the parade, like some general leading troops into battle, was Linda. She waved as she passed my porch, her smile sharp as broken glass. "You can wave those papers all you want," she shouted. "But this land belongs to the community now. You'll thank us when it's finished." I set my coffee down slowly, blood pounding in my ears. This wasn't just trespassing anymore. It was invasion. By noon, the field had transformed into something grotesque. Half-built pavilions, colorful tarps strung between posts, kids bouncing and shrieking in the inflatable castle. Neighbors grilled burgers like nothing was wrong. Music blared from rented speakers. drowning out the uneasy silence that lingered just beyond the fence line. They had planted themselves in the very shadow of the bears' sanctuary, and they had no idea how close they were to waking something they couldn't control. I marched down the hill, my voice cutting through the noise. "Linda." She turned, sunglasses perched on her head, arms crossed in smug defiance. "This has gone far enough," I said, stopping just short of the pavilion. "The sheriff already told you. This is my land. You're trespassing. You're building without permits. Tear it down, or I will press charges." The crowd quieted. Dozens of eyes fixed on me, waiting. Linda's smirk didn't falter. "You think one sheriff's visit means anything? Please," we spoke to the board. The community voted. "We have the right to repurpose this land for the good of everyone. You're just one man. We are many." Her words rippled through the crowd, and some clapped, cheering like it was a pep rally. I let the silence hang for a moment, then spoke low and steady. "You're playing a dangerous game. You're bringing families, children, strangers onto land that isn't yours. And the law won't be on your side when this explodes." Linda tilted her head, mock pity in her eyes. "What law? The law of the jungle?" She sneered. "Don't make me laugh. You can't scare us with ghost stories and fences. This land is ours now, whether you like it or not." And as if to punctuate her arrogance, the ground trembled. A deep, resonant thud rolled across the field. The inflatable bounce house shuddered. Plastic cups tipped off tables. Children shrieked, not from play, but from fear. Another thud followed. Closer. Heavier. The laughter died instantly. Linda's face paled, though she tried to mask it. "What was that?" Someone whispered. I didn't answer, because I already knew. The bears had heard the noise, they had smelled the food, and they were awake. One of the younger kids pointed toward the fence line, his small voice carrying through the silence. "Mommy." Eyes. Every head turned. There, in the shadows just beyond the steel fence, two glowing amber eyes stared back. Huge, unblinking, ancient. A ripple of panic tore through the crowd. Parents grabbed children. Teenagers swore. Someone dropped a plate, the crash startling the entire group. And then came the roar. Thunderous, primal, a sound that vibrated in the chest and clawed at the spine. The crowd screamed, scattering in every direction. Linda shouted, waving her arms, trying to corral them. "Stay calm, stay calm. It's fine. He's bluffing." But I wasn't bluffing, and the bear wasn't either. The fence shook violently as massive claws scraped against steel. The sound was like metal being torn apart. Neighbors stumbled back, tripping over picnic tables and lawn chairs. Drinks spilled, grills toppled, smoke and sparks rising into the air. The crowd's excitement turned into full-blown chaos. And through it all, I stood still, calm, watching, because this was no longer my fight. This was the HOA's nightmare. The day they trespassed, with bounce houses and BBQs, should have been enough to scare them straight. But arrogance has a way of twisting fear into denial. That night, I thought the neighborhood would stay quiet. I thought the roar that shook the ground and rattled their bones would send them home for good. I was wrong. By midnight, headlights slithered up the gravel road again. Not families this time. Not kids. These were the diehards. The board members. The ones too stubborn, too entitled to admit defeat. 4 SUVs. Windows tinted. Music low. They parked just beyond the tree line, their shadows moving across the beams of the headlights. I stood on my porch, shotgun leaned casually against the railing, not to use, but to send a message. Linda was at the front, as always. Her bob haircut gleamed silver in the moonlight. "You think you scared us this afternoon?" she called out, her voice sharp and clipped. You think some animal noises and cheap theatrics are enough to make us back down? Her bravado echoed in the still night air, but behind her I saw the hesitation. I saw the way one man's hand twitched nervously at his flashlight. I saw the way another kept glancing over his shoulder, like he expected those glowing eyes to reappear. I didn't move, didn't answer. I just let the silence work its way into their nerves. Because silence, when you're trespassing in bear country, is the loudest sound of all. Then, as if on cue, the forest answered for me. A low, guttural growl rolled out from the darkness, not distant this time. Not muffled by trees or fences. This one was close. Too close. Someone cursed under their breath. Another flashlight flicked on, the beam darting frantically across the field. Relax, Linda hissed. It's nothing. But she didn't finish, because the roar that followed wasn't just sound. It was power. It was fury. It was the kind of sound that makes your skin crawl and your ancestors scream warnings. In the back of your brain, the SUV shook from the force of it. Gravel danced under their tires, and one by one, every HOA member froze. The largest of my bears had stepped into view. Not behind the fence. In front of it. The gate, heavy, locked, reinforced steel, swung loose on its hinges. The padlock shattered like it had been nothing but brittle glass. He stood taller than the SUVs, his fur rippling under the moonlight, breath fogging in thick clouds. His claws dug into the dirt, leaving trenches behind. Linda's voice broke, trembling in a way I had never heard before. That's not possible. Her army of followers had no words, no slogans, no applause, only silence. I didn't move from my porch. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply whispered the truth, low enough for only me to hear. You wanted a fight. Now you have one. The bear bellowed again, shaking the trees, sending crows spiraling into the night sky. And with that, the HOA's invasion turned into something else entirely. A standoff. A war of arrogance versus nature. And I knew, in that moment, the HOA was about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. Bear's roar should have ended it. Any reasonable person would have run. But HOA board members, they weren't reasonable people. They were pride wrapped in paperwork. Arrogance and polo shirts. And Linda, their self-appointed queen, was too stubborn to admit she was wrong. Don't just stand there. She barked, spinning on her heels. Flashlights, noise. Make yourselves big. It's just an animal. Her voice cracked on the last word, but her minions scrambled to obey. Dozens of beams sliced through the night. Some shouted, clapping their hands, trying to mimic confidence. But confidence isn't enough when you're standing 20 feet from a grizzly, the size of a car. The bear lowered his head, muscles rippling, amber eyes fixed on the crowd. His claws dug furrows into the soil. A warning carved into the earth itself. And the air grew heavy. So heavy, it felt like the night itself was holding its breath. I leaned forward on my porch railing, watching, waiting. This wasn't my fight anymore. This was nature's judgment. Linda raised her chin, her voice shrill. Back? Get back, all of you. But no one moved. Not toward her. Not toward the bear. They were trapped in the middle. Fear pulling one way, pride pulling the other. And pride always costs more than fear. Then came the crack, not of claws, not of teeth, but of gun metal. One of the board members, jittery hands shaking, had drawn a pistol. The barrel glinted under the moonlight, trembling as badly as the man holding it. Don't! I shouted, my voice booming across the field. You fire that gun, and none of you are leaving here. But arrogance breeds stupidity. And HOA arrogance? It's terminal. The man squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out like thunder. The bear reared up on his hind legs, a monstrous shadow against the moon, and bellowed with fury. The sound split the night, sent glass rattling in their SUVs, sent every person to their knees. Linda screamed, covering her ears. Others ran blindly, crashing into each other, tripping over folding chairs left behind from the party. The shooter stumbled back, the gun nearly slipping from his grip, because the bullet hadn't brought the bear down. It hadn't even slowed him. The grizzly dropped back onto all fours with a quake that rippled through the ground. And then he charged. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath his weight. People scattered, shrieking. Some dove behind cars, others bolted for the tree line. Linda stood frozen, her mouth open but no sound coming out. The bear barreled forward, unstoppable, inevitable. And at the last possible second, he stopped. The massive beast loomed just feet from the SUVs, his breath fogging their windows, claws gouging into the chrome bumper. He growled low, teeth glistening, a sound that said, "Leave." Now silence. Then chaos. Engines roared to life. Tires spun. Gravel sprayed as one SUV after another peeled out of the lot. Headlights swung wildly as they tore down the road, desperate to escape. But Linda didn't move. She stood alone, shaking, her bravado stripped bare. And as the dust cleared, she turned toward me. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice hoarse. "Do you hear me? This isn't over." I met her stare, calm and unshaken. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." The bear growled one last time, the sound echoing through the night like a closing door, and then he turned, lumbering back toward the forest, vanishing into the shadows from where he came. Linda was left alone, exposed, defeated, but not gone, because people like her don't disappear. They regroup. They scheme. They strike back. The night of the roar should have ended everything. But with HOAs, defeat isn't the end. It's a pause, a chance to regroup, to weaponize what they know best: paperwork. The very next week, thick envelopes started landing in my mailbox. Not one, not two, a stack. Cease and desist notices. Alleged violation fines. Threats of liens against my property. The HOA had retreated from the field, but now they were launching their war from boardrooms and lawyers' offices. Linda's signature was on every single page. They accused me of everything: endangering the community, keeping unpermitted exotic animals, damaging neighborhood property values, even excessive noise disturbances, which I could only laugh at. Knowing the bears were the ones who roared. It was laughable, but dangerous. Because paper cuts add up. And in America, lawsuits can bleed you dry before you even step foot in a courtroom. I hired an attorney, sharp, gray suit, eagle eyes. He flipped through the stack of papers, his frown deepening with each page. "This isn't about violations," he said flatly. "This is harassment. They're trying to bury you in fees until you break. And if I don't?" I asked. He looked up. "Then they'll drag you into court. And with the right judge, you could lose everything." That night, sitting on my porch, I stared into the tree line. The bears were quiet, their sanctuary calm under the moonlight, but I knew better. HOA wasn't just attacking me. They were attacking the land, and the land had a way of defending itself. The first hearing was a circus. Linda strutted in with a team of lawyers at her side, hair sprayed to perfection, pearl necklace glinting under the fluorescent lights. She smiled sweetly at the judge, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. "Your Honor," she began, "this homeowner has created a dangerous environment for our community. We, the HOA, are simply trying to protect our families." Her lawyers nodded in unison, sliding glossy photos across the bench, images of roaring bears behind fences, kids' toys left scattered in panic, even tire tracks from the night they fled in SUVs, out of context. It looked damning, like I was the villain. But when it was my turn, I rose slowly. sliding my own folder across the bench. Receipts. Permits. State-issued licenses proving the bears were mine, legally, and protected under conservation law. And more than that, photographs, not of bears, not of roars, but of half-built structures, grills dumped in the grass, and trespassers laughing under banners that read community picnic. Your Honor, I said calmly, they didn't just step onto my land. They occupied it. They built on it. They brought children within feet of a live animal sanctuary after being warned repeatedly by both myself and law enforcement. If anyone endangered this community, it was them. For the first time, Linda's mask cracked. Her jaw tightened. Her nails dug into her briefcase. And for the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. This is bigger than fines, he said slowly. This is a matter of trespassing and liability. Until this case is fully heard, I am issuing a temporary restraining order against the HOA. No members may enter this property. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Linda's face went crimson. This is an outrage. She snapped. You can't side with him over an entire board of homeowners. But the gavel hit the bench like thunder. Enough. My ruling stands. For the first time in weeks, I breathed freely. It felt like victory, but victories in war are only temporary. Because the HOA wasn't done. Couldn't win with papers. So they would try something else, something darker, something off the books. The court order should have stopped them. No trespassing, no parties, no bounce houses, but the HOA wasn't interested in rules anymore. Wanted revenge. It began with little things. Tires slashed on my truck. Mail missing from my box. Anonymous calls at 3 a.m. with nothing but static on the line. Petty harassment. But pettiness is a prelude to something worse. And when people like Linda get cornered, they don't fight fair. They fight dirty. That night, the forest was silent. Too silent. No cicadas buzzing. No owls hooting. Even the bears were quiet. Their sanctuary resting in uneasy calm. I knew it before I saw it. Something was wrong. At 1:37 a.m., motion lights snapped on near the southern fence. Figures. Three of them, crouched low, dressed in black. They moved with purpose, lugging backpacks heavy with tools. Wire cutters gleamed under the floodlight. I grabbed my flashlight and slipped out the back door, keeping to the shadows. My heart pounded steady, not with fear, but with certainty. The HOA had decided to break in. From behind a tree, I watched them work. Snip, snip. Steel wire curled and snapped as they cut a hole through the sanctuary fence. The tallest one hissed, "Hurry up, before he notices." The second grunted, yanking at the metal. The third one laughed nervously. "Man, if those bears get out, shut up," the tall one snapped. "They won't. We'll set traps. Make it look like his negligence. Insurance'll eat him alive." Oh, wins. My blood went cold. They weren't just trespassing. They were trying to frame me. The last strand of wire gave way. With a metallic snap, the opening was just wide enough for a man to slip through. The tall one started forward, crouching low, but he didn't get far, because from the other side of the fence came a sound. A low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the earth. The men froze. One whispered, "What the hell was that?" I didn't move, didn't speak. I just let the forest answer. Two glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. Then another pair, and another. Amber orbs, burning in the shadows, stepping closer. The figures stumbled back, fumbling with their tools. The tall one hissed, "Don't run." "Don't you dare," but it was too late. The bear roared. Not a warning this time. A promise. The men bolted, scrambling through the grass, tripping over their own feet. One dropped his wire cutters. Another lost his backpack. The floodlights caught their faces for just a moment, enough for me to recognize them. Not strangers, not random vandals. Board members. Linda's right-hand men. They sprinted toward the SUVs waiting at the road. Doors slammed. Engines roared to life. Gravel sprayed as they tore down the hill, taillights vanishing into the night. The bears didn't chase. They didn't need to, because the message had been delivered. Loud, clear, unmistakable. This land would defend itself. I walked down to the torn fence, shining my light on the twisted metal. The bears lingered just beyond, massive shadows breathing slow and steady. For a moment, I locked eyes with the largest one. No fear. No aggression. Just understanding. We were guardians of the same ground, and the HOA had just declared war on both of us. The night of the sabotage should have been the end. But for the HOA, failure only fed obsession. Linda had tasted humiliation in the courtroom. She'd been chased off by the roar of the bears. And now, after her board members nearly lost their lives in the sanctuary, she was desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. It started with smoke. Thin at first. Almost UNNOTICEABLE. I caught the scent just after midnight, sharp and bitter on the wind. By the time I stepped onto the porch, the glow was already blooming against the horizon. Orange, hungry, rising fast. The field. They had set my land on fire. Flames licked at the half-built pavilions they'd left behind, devouring wood and tarp like kindling. Sparks leapt into the sky, carried by the wind toward the sanctuary fence. My stomach dropped. If the fires spread into the forest, the bears would have nowhere to run. And if the fire reached the houses downhill, the whole neighborhood would be in danger. This wasn't sabotage. This was destruction. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with one hand while sprinting toward the field with the other. Fire. Northridge property. I shouted into the receiver, "Send everything you've got." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "Units are on their way. Stay clear of the flames." But staying clear wasn't an option. Because movement caught my eye. Shadows. Darting near the blaze. Figures. At least 3 of them. And at the front, her silhouette unmistakable in the fireht. Linda. She stood tall, arms crossed, the inferno raging behind her like some twisted crown. Her voice cut through the crackle of flames. "You think you won? You embarrassed me in court. You scared my neighbors. You turned everyone against me. But tonight, I take it all back. You'll have nothing left but ashes. And when they investigate, they'll blame you." Her words were venom, but before I could answer, a sound rose above the fire. A sound deeper, older, a roar, from the smoke and flames. The bears emerged. Massive, unstoppable, their fur shimmering orange under the firelight. Their eyes burned with fury, their growls cutting through the chaos. The board members panicked instantly. One dropped a gas can, another tripped over a fallen beam, scrambling to his feet as the bear thundered closer. Linda froze. For the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes. Not arrogance, not pride. Fear. Pure, primal fear. The largest bear reared up on his hind legs, towering over her, his shadow stretching across the fire like a warning from nature itself. Linda stumbled back, her voice breaking. "I know. Stay back." But the bear didn't strike. He didn't need to, because justice sometimes isn't claws or teeth. It's fear. It's exposure. It's the truth roaring louder than any lie. Sirens wailed in the distance. Fire engines racing up the hill. Neighbors poured out of their homes. gasping at the sight, flames raging, HOA members caught red-handed, and the bears standing guard like protectors of the land. Flashlights, shouts, police orders barked, and then cuffs, one by one. Linda and her board were dragged to the ground, hands bound, faces pale with shock, arson, trespassing, reckless, endangerment. An officer rattled off as Linda was shoved into the back of a cruiser. She caught my eyes one last time, her face twisted with hatred and defeat. "This isn't over," she whispered, but it was. The gavel of nature had fallen, and the firestorm that was meant to destroy me had destroyed them instead. The blaze was contained before it spread. The field was scorched, but the sanctuary stood strong. The bears returned to the forest, their roars fading into the night like a final song of victory. And for the first time in months, silence settled over my land. Peace. Hard. One. Deserved. And that, folks, is the end of this war. The HOA tried everything: parties, lawsuits, sabotage, even fire, but they forgot one thing: some land cannot be conquered. If you followed me through this saga, make sure to subscribe to Listen HOA Stories, where arrogance meets justice. And every battle has a twist you won't see coming, because trust me, there are plenty more HOA nightmares out there, and I'll be here to tell them.